But we're going to talk today about the online course syllabus. Some of this will be pretty basic in terms of you already know what goes into a syllabus. But what we're going to focus on is how that might be different or how you might apply it differently in an online course. So we'll start pretty basic here with just a reminder is what is the purpose of our syllabus? What does our syllabus do for us? It does a few functions. It serves as the basic guidelines for a course. It outlines the expectations of the faculty and the students from one another. It serves as a foundation for measuring the learning experience in a course, and it's actually a contract or agreement between the faculty and the student. And you'll see that in the online environment, the number 4 is definitely very prevalent. The contract. Okay, so we're going to talk about a few topics of discussion today. We're going to answer a few questions. The first one is, how does an online syllabus differ from a traditional syllabus? The next one then is, what elements and policies should be included in an online course syllabus? And then lastly, how do I hold my students accountable for having read and understood the online syllabus and making sure that they follow that contract? You'll see that each of these questions has what some of you might recognize as a hashtag. Is anyone familiar with a hashtag? Yeah, they're used a lot in Twitter and Facebook in the online environment, and the hashtag is used to determine a topic of discussion. So if you're talking about something on Twitter, you include that hashtag, and that way anyone else who's talking about that same thing can track what you've said, and it's a way to kind of keep a discussion joined together. And so I've decided just for fun to use the concept of a hashtag throughout the presentation to keep an idea of which of the 3 discussions we're currently focused on. So we'll begin with the hashtag online differences. How does an online syllabus differ from a traditional syllabus? In a few ways. Typically, a traditional syllabus can be accompanied by verbal explanation. Most people in their first day of class, on the first day of class, will come in and they'll take the time to review the syllabus with the students and answer any questions they have because it can be clarified in class. You've got that additional way to make sure that students understand. They can just raise their hand and ask questions. You can provide additional details. You can say, oh, no, don't really worry about that too much, or we'll talk about that later. And it's also the responsibility of the faculty member to set the tone for the course in person. All right, is this a very fast-paced course that with strict deadlines and I have high expectations of you, or is it a little more laid back? It's for faculty development or professional development. The deadlines are a little looser, the tone of the course in that manner. On the other hand, an online syllabus should require no verbal explanation most of the time. The goal should be to require no verbal explanation. And it really should stand alone as a guide for the student and require little to no clarification, because it's less easy for the student to reach out to the instructor and raise that hand and say, hey, I don't understand. And the syllabus is responsible for setting the tone of the course electronically. You don't have the instructor standing up there giving their expectations like you do in an in-person course. So the important point is the online student is more dependent on the course syllabus for guidance. So you have to make sure that our course syllabi are more detailed, more direct to the point, and really almost overboard in terms of explanation so that there is less confusion from the student. So our next topic, what to include, what elements and policies should be included in an online course syllabus. Next. There we go. All right, we'll go through a couple of these, and some of these are pretty duh. All right, I'm not going to lie. But again, we're going to focus more on how we apply that to the online environment rather than an in-person course. Typically, with the faculty info, you want to provide a little bit about yourself, because in an in-person course, the students get to know you. They get to meet you. They get to see your face. But in the online environment, you don't have that opportunity to create that instructor presence. And so your syllabi is your first introduction to the student, if you haven't already sent a previous email or something like that. And so it's a good idea to include a photograph of yourself or of something that's important to you. And for that reason, again, just to create that, put a face to the name, to give some personality to who it is behind those emails and messages that you're sending. It's also not a bad idea to have your students share photographs of themselves or something that's important to them, again, to help create that community and help provide personality behind their interactions. You want to provide contact info and also your contact preferences. In an in-person course, your contact preferences is typically going to be, yeah, you can email me over the week, throughout the week, but I prefer to talk to me, after class or here in class. But in an online course, that's probably different. Would you prefer to be contacted via email only, or you can call me between 8 and 5 during the week, or something like that. You want to provide your preferences. Also provide your availability. Are you going to hold office hours, either in person or online? In person for an online course is not so useful, but you can hold online office hours, whether it be an instant message chat. It can be using like a live classroom kind of scenario, or Skype or something like that you can provide office hours for students. And you also want to determine your check-in and response intervals. You want to let students know, when can they expect you to respond if they send an email? Can they expect you to respond within 24 hours, within 48 hours? Do you check your email typically in the evening rather than in the morning, so that that cuts down on the multiple emails about the same thing because you haven't responded yet? And provide some biography information, again, because they're not going to get that opportunity to get to know you like they would in person. So a professional bio, and then personal if you want to, although I do encourage it. And again, personal within limits, of course. Yeah, like maybe share a few hobbies. Like I think I share in mine that I like to scuba dive and hiking and things like that. I don't, share about my personal family problems, really, obviously, but that goes without saying. The second element is very similar to what you would do in an in-person or a traditional syllabus. You want to include your catalog description, your course outcomes, what am I going to learn and why is this important to me. You want to outline the course expectations. But what you might find here that's a little bit different in the online environment is you want to explain what this course is not. Because a lot of people have presumptions about the online environment and what an online course is that are inaccurate. And so although it seems like you shouldn't have to acknowledge those presumptions, it's probably a good idea to do so. Is this course self-paced? If it's not, I would say this is not a self-paced course. We follow such and such schedule. Is not an independent study. There is a determined curriculum. This course, this is the amount of time you should expect to spend on this course each week. It's not easier, and it doesn't take less time than a traditional course. And then any other specific course information, such as prerequisites. For required materials, textbooks. One nice thing about an online course is that if you can find other materials, you don't always need a textbook. Now, there are great textbooks out there on certain subjects, particularly related to math and science and why reinvent the wheel. But if you don't need it, if you can find other resources, there isn't always the necessity to have a textbook. However, if you do use a textbook, you want to make sure you're providing them with the ISBN, including the title and the edition, and potentially recommend where to purchase. I know here we use MBS Direct. I know a lot of students use Amazon, though, if we're honest, right? But either way, if you can provide them with that link, here's the textbook if you haven't purchased it already. Here is a link to MBS Direct. Here is a link to Amazon where you can purchase the textbook. And those links are useful to students because then they don't have, there's no question as to how do they go about this if they haven't already purchased it, which they probably should have by the time they got the syllabus. But links are one nice feature about an online syllabus that we don't get in a printed syllabus. We can send them out to find other information that that we don't have to include specifically in the syllabus. You want to make sure you list any other required materials, such as lab kits or anything like that. Also include instructions on how to access library materials, even if it's just a link to the library's explanation webpage of how to do that. And then list any internet resources that might be required. Now, this does not mean that you want that every single article in your entire course has to be listed here, or every single web page used in your entire course. What you would want to list here is if there's like an e-book or something, or some resource that you're going to be using frequently throughout the semester. Probably Al Purdue is a good one if you have a heavy writing course or something like that. You want to list those recommended resources in your syllabus initially so that students can bookmark them, have them available, so as they're going through the course, then they're not like, what is she talking about? Oh, I have it already linked. In terms of course requirements, course activities, some of the activities will be very similar to what you do in a traditional course, and some will be very different. Either way, you want to outline what those activities are and what your expectations are of them. You might include readings, assignments, projects, research, group work, assessments, but either way, you want to explain to students how they're expected to submit these assignments. Okay, I've done my assignment, but now how do I get it to you? Okay, do I upload it in a Dropbox? Do I email it to the instructor, which a lot of instructors do, and that's such I can't imagine having to deal with all those emails. But you want to make sure that the students are clear as to how to get that information, that assignment to you. You also want to state the pace and flow of the course again. Here is your assignment. There's an assignment due weekly. You have to post to the discussion board weekly by Sunday. Make sure that they understand exactly what is expected of them at any given time. Additionally, again, links can be placed into the syllabus for additional explanation. You can create and I can help you with this in the future if you'd like, but you can create additional HTML documents so that it doesn't, explaining each assignment, so it doesn't have to be directly in the syllabus, but they can click the link and it'll open it and explain it, so it keeps your syllabus a little cleaner and shorter. Just one way to go about that. In terms of expectations, is number 5. You want to define participation. In an in-person course, participation is pretty clear. Participation is me basically talking and helping out with, participating in whatever activity is happening in the classroom. But in an online course, as an online instructor, how do you define participation? Is there a grade initially to begin with? Is there a grade for participation? And then what is participation? You are expected to check in twice a week. You're expected to check in every day. You're expected to respond to the discussion board every other day, or, whatever your expectations are for participation. You want to make sure that they're clear, because although they may seem clear to us, they probably aren't to our students, especially if this is their first time in an online course. You also want to make the responsibilities of the student clear. What is the responsibility of the student as an individual? What is their responsibility as a group member? If you're doing group projects, you might want to outline, guidelines for group participation. You want to outline the time commitment. Again, you want to remind them that this is a commitment. This course is a commitment. You should expect to spend this much time per week. You should be checking in every day. When you provide due dates, and this seems like a really silly thing, but it's true. You have to include time zones. If we have students even from, is Ohio the next time zone, or is it the next state over? Wherever the time zone, it's the next state over. Wherever the next time zone changes, we could have students from there. So if your assignment is due at 10 p.m., 11 p.m., if they submit it at 10 p.m., that'll be 11 for them. 11 for us, they're 10 p.m. So you want to make sure that your due dates have time zones. Even if initially our students are all from Pennsylvania, it's probably a good habit to get into now, so that in the future, as we're getting students from across the country, we always remember to include those time zones. In terms of discussion, what are your expectations for participation in discussion? Outline, your discussion grade is worth 10 points. 5 points is for your initial posting and that it's thorough, and the other 5 points is for your responses to other students' postings. You might even want to come up with a rubric for the discussion participation, just so that students aren't confused as to what your expectations of them are, especially if you want them to, if the discussions have to be cited. You might want to say, discussions must be cited with the resource that you pulled the information from and things like that. So there's no lack of clarity in terms of, what is expected of them. And again, this is kind of a duh thing again, but rubrics help define expectations. Even more so in an online course, because you're not standing there telling them what your expectations are. And a rubric is just a simple way to say, here is your rubric, here's what is expected of you, and it communicates those expectations clearly in a quantified manner, and there is less confusion. You also want to share our policy on plagiarism, academic integrity, and American Disabilities Act compliance. I believe those policies are already written in the syllabus, correct? So we'll continue carrying those over. For evaluation, you want to explain your grade criteria, components of the total grade, describe the grading percentage, points, or scale. So I have to earn this many points to get an A, this many points to get a B, this many points to get a C. The nice thing about online courses, and with our in-person courses, we use Blackboard for them as well, so we can see this as well. The students can see their grade as they continue on without having to constantly check in with the instructor, which is really nice. One thing to keep in mind, though, is to make sure that you keep those grades accurate, and especially you want to make sure that you're not doing things in Blackboard that accidentally make it look like their grade is worse than it is. For example, when somebody submits an assignment, if you don't grade it like within a certain amount of time, it counts it as like a 0 or something, and it shows them as, it's really strange. So you want to
just count it as nothing.
No, there's something that it does that it actually drops their grade until you go in and grade it, and then it puts it back up. I'm not sure exactly what it does, but you just want to be cautious of your grading turnaround. It's because students are able to see that grade constantly. But our students here are able to see their grades constantly because we use Blackboard anyway. Explain your late policy. And remember, what is, again, to use time zones. And in terms of late policy, in an online course, you may want to consider, is a day, is it going to be the same as it is in an in-person course? An online course, they can email it to me on the weekends, whereas an in-person course, typically you're expecting them to hand it to you in person. And then, again, supply students with a rubric for all types of activities. So most of this is very similar to what we're doing now. This is a new one, though. It may or may not be new. Some of you might have this included. In your online syllabus, you probably want to provide information related to technical support. And if anything, this will prevent you from getting all of the emails and calls related to technical support issues that you really probably can't answer anyway and would refer them to IT. So this is more of a workload helper here. Provide IT's contact info, their phone numbers and email address. You might want to also provide them with the web resources for the course management system, Blackboard. There is a great web resource link that I can send you if you're interested. And then maybe provide some additional support for other applications, web links to maybe office.com if you expect students to submit a PowerPoint presentation or something like that. It seems above and beyond, but it really helps prevent that workload issue later on. Yes?
I had issues with students using open PowerPoint.
Okay.
And they claimed they couldn't do all the things that I wanted them to do.
The Open Office?
Yes.
Okay. I am not terribly familiar with Open Office. I haven't used it.
Is it unreasonable for me to expect them to submit it in a PowerPoint format, I guess is my question. I don't put notes with it. So they
well,
can
I don't
do
think it's unrealistic, and that actually ties in perfectly to my next point, is I don't think it's unrealistic if it's stated. You must have access to a PowerPoint, a copy of PowerPoint, not Open Office, but PowerPoint for this course. So the next element that you want to include is technical requirements. Right up front, at the beginning of your course, your students should know what hardware and software and ancillary elements do I need to be successful in this course. List the hardware and software requirements for Blackboard or any other applications that you might, and I can send those to you. You're not going to expect you to figure this out on your own. But Blackboard or any other software that you might use in your course. I know one of my students took a computers course that they had a software called My IT Lab. I'm sure that has certain hardware and software requirements that are going to be needed. List any software that's going to be required, such as PowerPoint, And if you're finding that students don't have PowerPoint, where can they find it at? At a local library, at a local college. I'm sure there are places that they can find it. But if you tell them up front, then they can handle finding that. They can handle that from the beginning, and not when the assignment is due. You want to maybe provide links to additional software, such as Adobe Reader, Flash Player, if you use a lot of Flash videos. And that way, if the students don't have that software, they don't have to go out hunting for it. All you do is click the link, download it, and you're done. And then you want to list any required auxiliary devices that they might be required. If you require them to do a synchronous session where everybody's talking using a microphone, then they need to know up front that they're going to need a microphone, or a webcam if you require to do face-to-face meetings via the web or anything like that. So this is a big one, and I actually suggested that number 6 and 7, both related to technical, be included in our current syllabus format to the curriculum on Friday. Lastly, calendar of events. You want to provide a visual representation of assignment due dates, assessments, discussion posts, group work, when everything is done, when faculty are available and unavailable. The nice thing about the online environment is this can be done in a number of ways, and it's really cool. Are any of you familiar with Google Calendar? It's just one way to do it, where you can provide the students with an HTML link to this calendar, and you can even embed it, actually. And you can be constantly, if things change, you can update it. And they, just by opening the document again, they get the updated version because it's HTML. And so that's a pretty cool way to do it. But easier than that, you can just provide a list or a table or a spreadsheet, a timeline. Either way, because you're not there to remind them, now you can be sending announcements and emails as reminders, but either way, so because you're not there to kind of remind them and keep them on track as easily, you want to make sure that due dates are clear and that you provide a visual representation of them. And again, make sure that your due dates account for time zones. You want to provide some sort of orientation to the environment, particularly in the case if we have students who are not familiar with online classes and haven't taken online classes before. We've discussed maybe making an institution-wide video related to navigation of Blackboard. There are some Blackboard resources that you can use, but if your course is set up, and is set up a little differently than a typical course would be, or even if it's not, I encourage you to briefly create a screencast explaining the navigation of Blackboard. And that's not hard to do. I can help you with that if you want it. But just consider creating a brief video tutorial. Here is where you would find this. Here's where you find this. Here's how you submit an assignment. Here's where you find my contact information. And then that also serves as that first contact for you with the students and helps create instructor presence as well because you're helping them along. You might want to, yes?
Would you embed that right into
in the syllabus? I would. Mm-hmm. Yep. Or if you put it on, if we put it on YouTube or something or wherever we would put it, you can just provide a link to it as well. But I like to embed things personally, but some people don't. Yes.
Would the syllabus be created right on the website, or would you create it in Word
and then post it on the website? I say yes to both. In my opinion, I think you want to always have a printable version of your syllabus, so that because a lot of people will still like to have that print thing, they can take it and cross things off as they go. But in building it directly into the website really gives you a lot more interactivity and capabilities in terms of videos and links and things like that. And so my idea is to make your syllabus in Word, okay? Then save that Word, copy the text into the online environment, and then go in and add those interactive elements like your links and videos so that they actually have both. And I've seen that done a lot with instructors that will provide, here's the syllabus, and then at the top or the bottom is the printable version. Because you're making changes either way, you can just copy and paste them in then and add the interactivity elements to it. You might want to provide tips for success in online courses. This is my first online course. How can I be successful? There are a lot of web resources. This could be as simple as a link. And again, that's going to help. It seems like maybe overkill, but it's going to help with workload in terms of you're not going to get that constant contact from those first-time online students, who aren't clear about their expectations or how this works. Explain how the online environment is different from the on-campus environment. Again, that goes along with expectations. And describe the concept of learner-centered. And I added this one in here at the last minute. And I really think maybe we should have this in all of our syllabi, not just the online ones. But, online learning, as the way it works is very online-centered. You have to be motivated and self-directed, and you have to be proactive to be successful in an online course. And it doesn't hurt to reiterate that to our students. I know the college as a whole is working on, communicating learner-centered concept to our students, and we're also discussing resources to make sure that our students are prepared for online learning, but again, it never hurts to reiterate it. All right, so those are the elements that I would include in an online syllabus. The last discussion topic that we have is student accountability. How do I ensure that my students understand the online course syllabus and are held accountable? All right. Initially, the first thing you can do to make sure they read it and are actually accountable and that they understand it, which is really the important part, whether they read it or not if they don't understand it. You want to make sure that you emphasize the importance of the syllabus initially in your welcome email or announcement or however you initially reach out to the students. You want to make sure that they understand how important it is that they understand the syllabus and that they read it. And you want to state to them that this syllabus is a contract, and not only a contract, but a contract that they will be held to. That their understanding of the syllabus and their completion of the requirements is what will determine their success in the course. The next thing that you can do is if you want them to read it, you can make them read it. And when I say make them read it, require that they read it in order to be able to complete a requirement, such as conduct a syllabus quiz or agreement. You can simply say, yes, I agree that I read the syllabus, blah, 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 blah. But that doesn't really tell you that they read it. You might want to pick out some key elements in your syllabus, like your late policy or something that has to do with your major project at the end, and ask them a question about it. And just do a brief quiz. You can make it worth a couple points if you want. I make mine worth a couple points towards their quiz grade, like 5 points towards their quiz grade. Require them to get 100% on it, that they have to get 100%, so that if they got one wrong, they have to go back and read it and take it again. And then you can also use adaptive release, which I've used a little bit in the Road to Successful Online Teaching for those of you that are in it, where you have to complete this quiz, this syllabus assignment, before anything else is available to you. And so that requires them they have to read it, or they'll never be able to begin the course. So that's just another way to make them read it. And then lastly, again, like I said, if they read it but they don't understand it, it's still useless. Sorry, I forgot about this part. Important point. Even a perfectly written contract is useless unless it's signed. Okay, so yes, we have this contract with the student, but if we get, and until they acknowledge it, yes, they're held accountable for it. But when they do acknowledge it, and then they come back with, back to you and say, well, I didn't know. Well, you say, well, you've agreed, you completed the syllabus requirement quiz, you agreed that you read it. I have my proof here that you were stated that you did know. And then last but not least, even if they have read it but they don't understand it, like I said, there we go. You want to provide an opportunity for clarification. Yes, you want to make your syllabus so that it requires little to no clarification, but how can you clarify questions that they may have? Probably the least efficient way to do it is email. Okay, yes, they can email you, but then if 5 students have the same question, all 5 of them are going to email you, and you're going to have to respond to all 5 of them. Probably the easiest way to do it is to post a discussion board, or where they can ask questions about the syllabus. You can require them to just simply state, instead of doing the quiz, I read the syllabus and understand I have no questions, or you can allow them to ask questions. That way, anyone who asks a question, everyone benefits from the answer. The other thing you could do is have a live chat room with your class. During the first week between this hour and this hour, will be a live chat for clarification of syllabus and course requirements and such as that. We don't have that element now, and we won't have it right away with the new version of Blackboard, but we are very interested in the live chat element and the synchronous course element, and will be more than likely be added later. It's called Collaborate, is what it's called. Okay. So the golden rule, once you set it, you have to stick to it, particularly when it comes to students who are, however far away. Because if you change things, it's going to become very confusing, since you aren't there to explain those changes in class. So once you set that syllabus, and it seems really, really obvious, but once you set it, you want to stick to it, because you don't, as much as possible, because you don't have that opportunity to say, hey, we're just going to take a little detour here and change things a little bit like you might in an in-person class. It's much more difficult to communicate any changes in the online format than it is in person. Okay, well, that's my presentation. I'll open it up for any questions and discussion, if anyone has anything to share, or any policies that they include in a syllabus in an online course that they would want to share with the group, or anything like that.
I have a question about the template for the syllabus. You said you took something to curriculum. Is anything changing?
Stacy?
I wanted to come and listen to this, and we may add a technical requirement section, because that can apply to both traditional and non-traditional.
So there won't be just a separate online, because this is very different than, I don't put any faculty info in my syllabus. It's on my page.
And that's fine. I don't know that it needs to be, in terms of the online course, it doesn't necessarily need to be in your syllabus document. You can include that in the basic contact information, and then include that profile separate, like I did in the road. Yeah, it's...
There will not probably be a separate online template.
No, I don't think it needs to be either. I think I didn't really follow the template when I presented this in terms of where I would include each element. I probably should have taken a look at that. But yeah, I can help you with where you think each of these elements should be included in terms of, a lot of these things would be under policy, under grading, however it's laid out now. But you don't need to create a new They would just be there would be an element under the policies section. You don't need to create a new section necessarily for each item. Amanda, you had a statement?
I had a question, but now it's escaping.
Okay. Well, if it comes back,
You
don't.
gotta write it down like I do.
I talk really fast too. I apologize. So if anyone had questions, anyone else? Discussion point? Yes, remembered.
I had a problem in the beginning of the semester with probably 5 of my 20 or 24 students dropping because the course was not what they were expecting it to be. And they gave me some answer like, it doesn't seem compatible with my learning style. But I think my sense was that they were expecting it to be an independent learning, less work
Right.
course, and it's most certainly not. And I would imagine that gradually, as we move towards having more online courses, students will get a better feel for that. But I'm wondering if there are any plans in the works on, I guess, in orientation, or maybe having something on the website about what it means to be enrolled in an online course, or if we could have something in the course descriptions when the students are trying to register, because of course, once they've committed to the online course, if a week into it they drop, they really can't get into another course.
Right.
And so they're stuck because they've lost a course, potentially, that semester.
Right. The students' attitude towards online learning is on our plan. We've started by addressing it we've created just a simple document or brochure is online learning right for me? And they can self-assess themselves, and it talks kind of about the traits of a successful online learner. Moving forward, we'd like to come up with, and again, we don't have the resources to do it right now, but additionally, in the future, we'd like to come up with an assessment that students would take to prepare them for online learning and kind of give them feedback as to where they might need to improve, change their attitude a little bit. I've also suggested, and I don't know if our student management system allows this, but I suggested including the syllabus at registration, or at least having the syllabus or a more thorough description of the course available somewhere on our website that students can check it out prior to registration as well. And that's actually a gold standard for online learning. So it's definitely in our sites, just it may take a little while to get all the way there. But yeah, no, it definitely needs to be addressed. I agree. The attitude before, they should understand before they even register what the expectations are of the course. Any other comments or discussion or questions? Okay. Well, thank you very much for coming.